And we're back. Hi, Katharine.
Hey,
Happy belated Mother's Day to you.
thank you.
And I understand that is the crux of our topic today.
It seemed appropriate. So,
Absolutely. So,
yeah.
on this lovely
Before
Mother's
we
Day
start,
weekend,
did you
yeah.
get Leo to get something for your wife?
Oh, he was on it. He knew
Okay, good.
exactly what to
Good.
get for mom. And
Okay.
I aided in the acquisition of this orchid, but it was all him.
Awesome. Love to hear that. Good. Good man. Yes, I wanted to talk about Mother's Day today just because there's been so many little anecdotes that have come up through the years that I feel like it's an important topic to talk about in Strata. You can choose to be child free in your own life, but you cannot live in a child free world. Um, it's a necessary thing. I'm sorry, necessary evil for some people, but no, it's part of shared living. And when children become absent in stratas, I tell you, it doesn't become a better community as a result. That lack of community and the lack of, using a word from one of the women from the CMHC, the lack of mixicity, it takes something away from the community. So, um,
I can see
yeah,
that completely. And in my little neighborhood, we've got a couple of child-free couples that are older and, kids in them are a bit oil and water. They don't mix very well, but still they understand and they're generally good. And my son, when he was little, was the number one reason why we met most of our neighbors. He was more social
100%.
than any of us, and who doesn't love an adorable little person? Sure, we all kind of
Absolutely.
are tired of the noise and the crying and the stomping and in close quarters, but little people are great. So
But
um,
also, like, noise is part of shared living. Like, if you don't want noise, don't live in urban centers, don't live in shared living. You should probably just take a tent and head off to the mountains right now, to be honest. Um,
is that the only option?
no, it really is. And
Oh,
if you look at like policy conversations and the things that are happening right now, we're only going to see higher density and more people shoved together in smaller corridors, right? Like they generally have these areas where they want to put higher density on either major traffic corridors or a small buffer of. And, there's some areas where they're starting to do some gentle density, but for the most part, you're always going to see very high populations of people in the same areas. Um, yeah, so it's a fact of the matter. I've dealt with so many different entities. There was a group that managed a shared amenity for a number of different communities, and I was helping them through the process of redoing their operating rules. And they had worked on this for quite some time. And the real sticking point was that there's so many different types of people that live in that community and they all wanted what they want. And it became obvious looking at the files that they gave me straight off the bat that they had been trying to close every single behavioral loophole out there. Um, and and the factions that were showing up to the town halls were very much interested in their own position, but it wasn't necessarily the attitude of the wider group. Like, so for example, one of the things said was about the early morning time, and old people need to use the pool from, 7 to 9 or 7, 8 to 10 in the morning. And I happened to ask at one of the town halls, just can I clarify how often is this becoming an issue? Like, how often before 9 a.m. in the morning are there rambunctious gangs of children wandering the pool? Um, and there's just dead silence. And then someone inevitably in the group of 55 plus speaks up and says, well, that's not the point.
mm,
So like
right.
here's where we're at. Where like we have to make room for each other because when you create a community or a society where children are not welcome, guess what? They start acting like it. They'll rise to the occasion. So what I would
Rise to
challenge
the
some of,
occasion.
well, no,
Children's
I'm
always do that, don't they?
seriously, if you're like, oh my God, that kid is just so annoying. Oh, that kid is gonna start being more annoying because they're like, well, I can't win, right? You're going to think I'm annoying. You're going to think I'm a nuisance either way. So now me and my buds are going to make your life super fun. Whereas if you, as a neighbor or a council member, if you could be overheard talking nicely. Oh my gosh, the kids in our community are great. They're so respectful. Yeah, there's a little noise, but that's what kids do. They're so great around here. We love our kids in this neighborhood. Let yourself be overheard saying that and then see what happens. Those kids will rise then to that expectation. So I don't know, like I find it interesting because this conversation comes up over and over and over about children not being welcome, basically in stratas. So
It can be tough. Like we've all lived underneath.
Where are we supposed to live then, right?
We've all lived underneath children in strata, in apartments, in hotels, and when they're running around like crazy at 5:40 in the morning, that's disruptive. And how do you accommodate for everyone's needs in that space? Is there sufficient soundproofing possible in some low-rise strata where it's not concrete, or are you
No,
doomed to have noise
you're
like
doomed. If
forever?
you're noise sensitive to noise, live on an upper corner.
There you
I
go.
don't know what else to
That's
say.
the answer. Yeah, because I've stayed at a timeshare where that was the reality, and we laughed about it because we have a kid. But 5 something in the morning, thump, 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 and it didn't stop. That was it. You're up. It's a good thing I'm a morning person.
Well, you get the most out of your vacation that way, to be honest. You should be thanking them. And like, I get it, to be honest. I think that the problem comes is that a lot of the time the kids are just the easiest outlet, right? Like these people, again, and an example that I was thinking to myself in terms of like where friction exists in stratas with children, and it's a couple different places. It's number one reason is noise, right? Like that's it. Noise, and then sometimes some like minor above wear and tear damage complaints. But
Yeah.
The ones that make it to the CRT are usually about noise, and it goes two ways. So either the noise is affecting other people, aka they're like banging, stomping, frolicking, laughing, playing, or vice versa, where other people's noise is waking up babies, but that seems to be far less, few and far between, like when you look through the CRT cases. And I found there was one that was tagged as a notable case by the CRT itself. So it had a really good definition of how it described unreasonable noise where it came to children in strata. And what it talked about is it used other, and this is what I tell a lot of strata councils to do, it used other authorities' definitions of noise and nuisance. So like it pulled out the World Health Organization's guidelines on nuisance and noise. And I'll post a link in the chat because there's a really good PDF link where it outlines like 3 pages where it actually shows kind of like decibels and how like the frequency and volume it has to be, etc. So in that particular CRT case, this owner, and God, man, if you had so much time to get all this done, maybe you could have just like put some styrofoam up on your ceiling and got to know your neighbors better, and you would have got a better outcome than what happened in this particular case, by the way. But he had like multiple engineering reports that did like all this decibel readings and directionality. And ultimately, the only thing that the CRT said that he had actually proved based on this reporting was that they kept their TV on too loud for about an hour every day. So like everything else was proved to be incidental or not reasonable. So and I think he was in that particular case, they were awarded like $600 for the TV being loud, and guaranteed that those particular owners and that strata ownership group spent so much more on lawyers to prepare for that CRT. It would have taken about 2 years to get through than that $600. And I bet you that the outcome for that community's interpersonal dynamics has just gone through the toilet, to be honest. So
I do applaud the owner for going to the effort and actually taking those decibel ratings. One of the failings of either strata council or of owners in complaints is that they haven't checked and they haven't looked into or properly investigated the issue. So, there's a lot of frivolous complaints. Going to the effort of actually checking those decibel levels at least identifies that that they have taken it seriously. In this case, obviously, it didn't meet that threshold. But I've heard plenty of other cases of people launching complaints, but they haven't done an investigation.
I feel like the strata let that one get too far, to be honest, because like when I have trainees or buildings that ask me about dealing with ongoing noise complaints that are a lot of the time to do with just the way that the unit's been built or like the expectations or the mental health of the residents that are involved. But I tell them to get involved and actually post proper notice to enter both suites and then have a council member go one upstairs, one downstairs and do a series of tests. So like, okay, we're going to put the TV on at volume 30, now at volume 50, now at volume 100. Now we're going to vacuum, now we're going to walk, now we're going to stomp, now we're going to laugh, now we're going to talk. And then they can go on the phone and they can do this thing where they just make notes. Because I was thinking to myself, how much money did they spend on those engineering reports? And they probably could have done it like just as thoroughly themselves. And if it can, like, as a base, and then if it continued, maybe get engineering reports. But I feel like there was some steps skipped through that process. And it's cool to see the CRT's description of like what the definition is of unreasonable and using proper sources is helpful. But I feel bad for the people involved in that circumstance, and especially the kids, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for the kids. It's difficult. Each person's circumstances are different. You've got some people who are shift workers. They work overnight. They rest during the day. Disruptive environments aren't good for them. They moved into a unit. There was a retired couple living above them. Everything was fine. Ownership changes. Now they live in mayhem. And yeah, they didn't have the option to take the top corner unit when they bought into that building. And only now has it become a problem. I do have sympathy for them.
I do too. I'll be honest, if I'm a nighttime shift worker and I live on a major arterial route or within a shared living or wood frame building, though, I'm going to invest in some really good earplugs. And you know what? If you talk to acoustic engineers, the cheapest thing that you can do and the most effective is to just buy a fan or a white noise machine for the affected person, because that will actually be more effective than installing all sorts of other types of way more expensive technology to mitigate the noise.
I like that. Good suggestion.
Yeah, things like adding plants, adding wall hangings, adding runner carpets, asking them to wear slippers upstairs. There's so many collaborative solutions that can be talked about while it's still civil and while people are willing to work on it. But if you come at that family and be like, you exist and you have children and they make noise, therefore I hate you, you're not going to get them wearing their slippers, okay? They're going to be like, well, little Bobby's going to be doing some stomping now.
Yeah. It doesn't, you don't want it to be combative. That's not helpful.
No.
You know, this is, we're tying in Mother's Day. There are two parents for children, you know, and in some cases, families live apart. Parents, single parent families are raising their kids. You had some specific observations on mothers, and maybe you could tell us about those.
Yeah, I find too that moms get a bad rap in these scenarios a lot of the time as the one who has to manage the dynamics here, instead of it just being expected that children will make noise or that there's a father involved. Like, why is Mr. Homeowner here not usually involved in those scenarios and the judgment that's being passed? Like when we think about 55 plus buildings, and the complaints about the subsequent regulations and changes that allow for classes of people to also inhabit those units as long as there is a 55 plus person in that unit. And somehow it's the women and or the subsequent pregnancy that comes from a younger woman shacking up with an older man who's 55 plus. And somehow it's not Bob, the 55 plus, that is going to take the judgment, take the hit, take the social isolation from their neighbors, the snarky remarks, things like that. It's going to be the woman and the child and not Bob. So I just think we need to look a little bit higher level of how we're including everyone in our community. Are we making it welcoming for these people? Because if we create a building and a community in which it is incredibly cold and sanitary for children, then the whole community, like once children are treated a certain way, then eventually everyone starts to be treated that way. And it just becomes a place where nobody wants to live. Yeah, I think about even different complexes that I've lived in as a kid, and over the years, depending on where you live, you can do trick or treating or not.
Yeah.
Sometimes people will actually actively discourage children from going and knocking on doors, and they'll post notices saying, "Don't come up here." They turn off their lights and stuff
Right.
like that. I'm sorry, I gotta say, guys, like if you know you have children in your complex, go out and buy $10 worth of candy bars and be a good person. Like, what is going on here? In fact, if you know you have children in the complex, get the council to post a reminder. Hey, not everyone has kids, but we do in this building. It's encouraged that you be part of the community, get some candy. You could get
It's
some
funny,
apples if
in
you really
some
want to be that
communities,
person.
you've got restricted floor access, so some
Mhm,
floors would have no kids and some floors would have kids, and
mhm.
so you would have these, these levels with no kids on them
Nothing
at all, in
wrong
which
with
case
the council.
I'll
So
eat the chocolate.
downtown, what they
Yeah,
do is they get the strata council or the whatever group will come down with a table in the lobby. So in downtown, you see all these kids going around to just the front doors of the stratas. Um, so that's an option, but it's always nice specifically when a building embraces the kids that are there and they're like, no, not only do we know you're here, we're preparing for you to be here. And we're so excited. Um, like every year in every rental apartment that I've had, if I know there's kids, I buy candy bars for them. And inevitably, no one comes around because they're expecting to not be allowed to.
yeah.
So I feel like we got to go on the offense and start showing people they're welcome, and it'll come back around for us. Like the like it'll create better communities as a result. Like even so, for example, Mother's Day this weekend, and actually it was my son's birthday. There's my son's birthday's coming up on Wednesday, so we had 8 kids running around the Strata complex that I rent in, and um, there's um, there's a bunch of seniors that live in the complex as well, and one of them's walking by to take down the recycling and stuff, and she literally stopped and like was like, oh, the community, and it's so beautiful, right? Like it's the middle of the day on a Saturday. Yeah, they're making a lot of noise. But it added to like this level of joy in the neighborhood that it was infectious. Like everyone was having a good time this weekend. There's little pockets of things happening, and I don't know. It was wonderful. It was a great weekend. So yeah. What's
Yes.
it like in your area? Do you guys trick or treat, or are you the turn off your lights and
We do. Last year, we had pumpkins out, and, I don't think anybody came to our house. We're in a quiet neighborhood. You go 5 minutes away, though, and you're close to the elementary school, and there's lots of kids and lots of visitors. So, it is street by street. Plus, I live in a very hilly community, so it's not easy
Yeah,
to get
you're in
to.
that area,
Yeah,
like Coffville, West Van area where you have to
yeah.
go like weird alleyways.
So,
And people drive really fast in that area too. I wouldn't let Nolan walk around by himself.
yeah, there are certain pockets that are really great for trick or treating, and those are the ones that they can't spend $10 on candy. They would spend
No. So
dollars.
Norgate, for example, like if you're on the North Shore, if you go down to Norgate, they
Yeah,
buy like hundreds of dollars worth of candy. They'll have
and that's a great
potentially,
neighborhood.
yeah,
It's flat.
crazy amount of kids.
As
Yeah.
they're all close together, it's perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, what did we do? We ate the Halloween candy ourselves. No,
Yeah.
Leo took some to school to give away. There was a
That's sweet.
give your candy to charity,
Yeah.
but yes, it is nice to have a sense of community.
It is. I mean, even like shared spaces and stuff like that, like if you have an empty amenity room, that's something where if you're looking for rentals, let people know that they could use it for their kids' birthday parties. Because like when I was a downtown parent in Vancouver, there like you have to rent a rec room or go do it at a park. And if you have a kid's birthday in the wintertime, you're not going to have a rainy birthday party at the park. So like make it a space where like a building where people are welcome. Um, Even things like having playgrounds, like if it's within your budget to have a space where you can have a playground, that kind of thing is awesome. It's always nice to have a space that feels like it's private for your community, and you don't have to go out to the park to like enjoy some outdoor fresh air with your child. But on the flip side, through my research, there's actually a lot of restrictions around the installation and maintenance of playgrounds. So if you're going to go through that process, make sure that you take a look at some of the regulations. Don't go and buy just a Canadian Tire brand swing set and put it into your common area, because there's some liability and commercial use considerations that you have to think about as well. So like, it's not that hard to include children in the planning of your community. It just takes a little bit more effort and thought, to be honest. Yeah, no, for sure.
Kids are by no means the only source of noise in close communities. You hear it from neighbors themselves. Just could be their television set, could be their hobbies, could be that they run a vacuum or other things on their balcony for hours on end. There's been some CRT cases about those sorts of things. I think there is just got to be an understanding that in a shared community you have noise, and if you can be respectful of your neighbors while you're making noise, I think that is welcome as well.
Well, that's true. I don't think too, because we're so close to each other, and a lot of the noises are just because of normal living. So like the stress of the frame and the wood and the HVAC system and just like normal steps and airflow and all these kinds of things. But with children, there's like this very visible externalized like reason that can be pointed to. So a lot of the time too, it's more so that maybe we do need to thinking about policies in housing, not design our homes in corridors where these humans are going to be bombarded with unreasonable amounts of noise, because then you think about, once you're in that scenario for like years, you're going to end up being affected by sleep disturbances and stress. Like there's studies about even when you're on corridors that have streetlights, the brightness of the streetlights, even with blackout blinds, sometimes you get light coming through, and that color of light can be really disruptive. The bus hydraulics, by the way, if you're on a major transit route, which is a push for housing to be on transit routes, but that is a decibel meter reading of anywhere between 70 and 90 decibels. And by the way, when I lived on Granville in Georgia, 6:30 a.m., the 14 or the 7 would go by every morning and let out those hydraulic noises right outside my window. And in the summer, because you have to keep your windows open without AC, you just have to deal with it, right? And then you get traffic noise, you get exhaust, you get light. So like, you're literally being bombarded with stresses all day long in these scenarios. And then we're like, oh, well, why are people grating on each other and getting mad at the kids? Well, it's because we're literally driving ourselves to within an inch of our own physiological comfort as a group, to be honest, I feel like. So, yeah, we're getting pushed to the edge of our mental health a little bit right now, I think, in terms of the density. So it's just, kids absorb that, right? They feel what we feel, even if they can't describe it, and they don't understand something just because they're told, right? Like they can't really fathom like there's necessarily all these other people that are going to be affected by them just jumping. They are literally just trying to develop a sense of their understanding of the world, and they do that through play and through physicality, right? And so we're asking them to stop what is their like most base nature to learn. And to hold that back. And it makes me sad, to be honest. And I'm happy to not be in stacked living now. The first thing that my son asked me when we moved to our little detached, little strata detached house, Mom, can I stomp?
Yeah, I get it. And I mean, the fact that he knew that it wasn't great to stomp previously was, it was good. I mean, I do hope that most parents
it's
can
not
take
good.
from.
He knows he can't stomp, talk too loud, hit the walls. He can't talk in the hallways. He can't, oh, don't throw up your arms too high. You might hit the sprinkler heads. Like, apartment living is not conducive to children, but yet families are forced into those spaces because they're the only affordable space.
Yeah. And I mean, we've talked a lot about housing and its supply and its mix, and how the mix isn't really matching the expectations and the needs of people as they're growing, but the costs are such that they can't afford to find the right circumstances for them. So that's really difficult.
It is. And I feel like, because I was at the Missing Middle conference on Friday, and I'm going to do like a whole event unpacking debriefing on that, so I don't want to get into all of it. But something that kind of stood out to me was a lot of the time the people who are in those policy and housing conversations are just a little bit out of touch with what's happening on the reality on the ground. So for example, the housing minister at a previous CCI session had said, well, we're not going to do strata council education here in BC because the Ontario model hasn't discernibly worked. And, I live in a duplex and they're easy, so I don't see the point. And that's more than half the stratas. Now, she told a second part of that story in this panel on Friday. And the second half was that, her husband's ex-wife lives next door in the other half of the duplex, and the kids kind of shuttled, and it really worked well for them. And as she told this story, both myself and 3 other women at the table turned to each other and were like, that would never work for my situation. And it just was hilarious because what a policymaker saw as being universally easy or what have you is not necessarily the same thing interpersonally that what regular folks might necessarily be dealing with. And honestly, I thought that story was hilarious.
That is quite interesting. Yeah, I don't know that I can see the convenience side of that, but the proximity it's too close.
Well, and usually you'll see that the person who describes a situation as working well is the one who is most comfortable with the circumstances. I would be really curious to ask the ex-wife how she felt about that circumstance, to be honest. Just saying. So, but it's just, again, we're not considering the reality on the ground. When people are saying yes, let's even when people are fighting over noise or bylaws or child bylaws or age bylaws, do you think that these kids who live in the complex don't know what's happening, or that these battles are being fought over them? And it doesn't matter how many times their parents tell them at night, honey, it's not about you, it's not your responsibility, I love you no matter what. They feel like it's their fault, right? So I just have to say, I think we need to pull ourselves up a little higher and post Mother's Day thinking, what kind of world are we creating within our stratas to help mothers and children and to lift them up and create a supportive space for them, instead of treating them like they're a nuisance and an inconvenience, because that sucks. So
we were all little once, and we grew up in different places with different circumstances, but we all had to figure out the world, and we all made too much noise for somebody around us at that time. And I think being cognizant of the fact that is how it happens is got to be accepted. And I think that there are certainly circumstances that would make it easier for people with kids to allow them to be kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's a big thing right now. It's all, even the developers are talking about it. We expect the population to rebound and need housing. I'm like, okay, so you guys want us to have more babies, but you're not making the houses and the affordability for us to then have the babies in. So you see how this is a whole chicken egg thing here, guys. Who's gonna play, who's gonna flinch first here at this point? So I think it's pushing though. I've seen more trends lately to do with even the province of BC, and Prepared BC has gone on a really big marketing push about connecting with your neighbors and creating community. So I think that things are shifting. So
good.
I'm curious to see how things unfold over the next little while, especially with Strata. There's lots going on with Strata right now. It's crazy. So.
Oh, you've got some more stories to tell from this event. I can feel it.
So many stories. I have 48 pages of notes from Friday. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Anything else that's burning that you need to spill the beans on early, or are you saving that up for this post?
No, I mean, honestly, it was the same stuff we've heard. And I want to take the time to look through, because some things really jumped out at me at first. But I want to look through for the patterns, and I want to take a look back through my notes and see what are my insights about the industry, and where am I seeing things that I clearly see in people like, like yourself in the data side of things that we all really clearly see that the panels are not talking about. Because I would have lost $5, and I will never know if it was because I was in the room or not, that it influenced it. But I turned to someone at the beginning of the lunch just after the breakfast, and I was like, I bet you $5 they don't say Strata all day long. And we had a laugh about it. But then it wasn't until like the session way later in the day, after I had asked 2 questions at different panels, then finally someone said the word Strata. And then after that, they said it a couple times. But I would have lost. I'm glad
They went all that time before they said
went,
Strata
well, it was only after I started being myself, and then they were like, oh, we better say Strata. Oh God. She's
Right.
So yeah. No, it was just interesting. I would have lost $5 though, because they did say it. So there is a wave amongst these multiplex developers that somehow Strata is connected to something that they're doing there. They're just not quite sure what it is yet. And I'm doing my best to get that message across. So yeah.
Noise in multiplexes will be even more pronounced than noise in some strata communities. High-rise buildings probably are better insulated for noise than most multiplexes.
Well, a wood frame, right? Multiplexes are going to be mostly wood frame. And having grown up in a 100-year-old wood frame house, when I lived in the basement suite, used to call the upstairs occupant Thundersaurus Rex.
Yeah, that's the way it goes in that. My brother, when he did a renovation, stuffed full insulation, like exterior insulation, in the floors to try and keep noise transfer down. And I don't know, we got to do a noise test, send somebody up there to stomp around and let me hear it from underneath. But I mean, he went to the effort of doing it. I hope it worked.
You can get online decibel readers too, just for councils who are wanting to do some basic preliminary investigations. You can't take to the CRT with that kind of scientific reading, but you can like go to Home Depot or Canadian Tire, get like a basic decibel reading. It will help you with the initial investigations. But if you get to like a point of litigiousness and conflict to the point where it's going to the CRT, then you want to actually engage an engineer to do some proper sound readings.
But that's a great suggestion for that first, hey, let's just sense check how much of a problem we're dealing with here.
Like, is it even legit? Because I find like sometimes some of these councils could have shut down these issues with noise complaints about kids, because like I've met the kids, and a lot of the time too, I'm gonna say it, a lot of the time that I've found the ones that get picked on are newcomer families that are living in what the other established neighbors feel are too high of a density of occupancy for the unit than what they would want. So they might be a set of parents and 2 kids in what is a 2-bedroom. So they feel like it's more noise. But when I've gone to the building or when I've talked to other neighbors, they're like, no, those kids are incredibly polite. We don't even know if they're here half the time. And it's just that one guy, Bob, that's fixated on the kids being the noise thing, when really it's not. So in those cases where I've found the Strata Council steps in and says, look, we will do the investigation, go to the different units, and then set a response that we're going to monitor the situation, Bob. We're not saying you're wrong, but from the preliminary investigation, this seems to be normal living noise, and then reference other things. So like per the City of Vancouver or City of Chilliwack noise bylaws and per the World Health Organization guidelines, the first level of investigation shows that these are normal expected living noises for multi-unit dwelling with wood frame build and etc. And there's some things that we will encourage both parties to do, like yourself. When you get a fan, we'll even pay $50 for you to get a white noise machine just to like shut you up a little bit. And we'll ask them upstairs to put carpets down in some areas and whatever. But I find like that the setting the expectation back on the point of the council, where you don't pander to unreasonable expectations of library quiet in multi-unit living, that can oftentimes be also like not where it's legitimate. Like this, there's like, I don't know what they got. They're like taming banshees in that unit. Okay, like properly investigate that noise complaint. But where it seems to be investigated and it's reasonable, don't pander to that dude, okay? Shut that down. And let them talk to the city. You know, hey, we've done investigation, and if you still want further, you're welcome to take it to the city and put in a bylaw noise because we've done it and we'll continue to monitor, but it seems fine.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, no, for sure.
Good point.
Yeah.
No, and those are great suggestions for strata councils. Property managers are probably more experienced. They probably dealt with a ton of noise complaints over the course of their careers and might have some of these suggestions more to hand. But your comments about the decibel reader that you can get very reasonably for high level investigations and then being able to refer to some of these resources is good. We'll put some of those into the link for this discussion.
Yeah. Awesome. And I'm excited for next month. So next episode. And we had a little mix up today. We posted the one with her, but we are going to have Victoria Jolley from Avesta Property Management up in the Sea to Sky Corridor, Squamish Whistler. I have known her and Danielle Dobson, who own that company, and they jointly manage the strata and the rental division. They're such fantastic women, and I cannot wait for you to sit down and talk with her. With me.
Looking forward to it. Yeah. Perfect. Well, thanks, Katharine. Good topic. Cheers to the mothers out there trying to do their best with all their kids. And dads, take some responsibility too. I think we're pretty good at quietening our kids. We'll shove a screen in front of their face and silence them immediately, but we just don't get enough credit for it.
Sure, that's the problem.
Anyway, thanks, Katharine. That was a good one. We'll chat to you next month.